Before I begin, I'm going to tell you this is not a justification for Matthew. This is not a justification for myself. This is just the facts, the proofs. This is our side of the story. So I want everybody to fully understand exactly where Matthew is, uh, where everything's coming from. And from what I posted earlier, it's causing not uproar, it's causing maybe some confusion, it's causing a different mixed reactions from the family. However, by the end of this, I'm hoping that you guys will understand where we stand in this with Matthew, and after that, you as the family member can make your own decisions. Uh, See, Matthew Matthew started changing his changed the tide when he was probably about 7, almost 8 years old, because that's when I entered his life and stayed there. At the time, uh, Maylena, prior, just not too long prior, got out of a relationship with some gentleman, and that's over and done with. When I came into his life, Matthew was probably just at a loss. I don't know, but shortly, when I came in, I was, introduced as his dad, which I know probably shocked him, but we had to tell him the truth, and we told him, actually after talking to certain family members, they agreed that it was within Matthew's best interest to know the story about me. If any of you family members know me, at that time I was not the nicest person in the world. I wasn't the person I am today. But at the time when I came into his life, I was slowly but surely trying to get my head out of my ass myself. So the tide shifted. We did explain the story of Matthew about his mom and I, and how he became to be, and the absences, and where we stood now. And he accepted that. The first journey we made in life, with her, with Maylena and I, was that I was going to be a stay-at-home father. At the time, Maylena was financially secured to support myself, her, and her daughter, and Matthew. And that's how we led our life for quite some time. She had an apartment. However, within 6 months, it was actually cheaper, and we moved into a house, which was fine. I mean, it was a nice, quaint little house. We were starting our own life. I was there for both kids. I was there for her daughter. I was there for Matthew. I'm the one that got him off to school. Kept the house clean, kept him fed. Maylena was the breadwinner. That's how it was working, and we lived a very comfortable existence for just about a year and a half, almost 2 years. Then the tide shifted, where Matthew was coasting at school. Yvonne was also coasting, so we have found our own little niche for the four of us. However, in 2012, because Maylena got sick. I believe she had like really bad bronchitis or something, at the time, and she couldn't go to work, and her employer didn't provide, very good benefits. They terminated her employment. However, I tried to go back to work to help support, and jobs were slim. We're talking, probably that recession of 2008. It wasn't easy. So, I mean, God forbid. I mean, we lost the house, and that's just how it went. We had to scramble to figure out what we're going to do for the children. It came out to be, Melena's brother and his then, girlfriend decided that they would allow the kids to live with them, and Maylena and I were living with her mother, in the backyard in a tent, because that was what was working at the time. I mean, at least, backyard's not ideal, but it was the situation. We were still actively involved with the children daily for every day, checking up with them in school, taking them to school, bringing them home from school, doing homework with them at her brother and her brother's house. We were doing what we needed to do, spending time with them, coming out on the weekends. We were not absentee parents by any means. I was looking for work. It was slow going. I couldn't figure out anything. And then in an unfortunate day where I was helping Melina's mom assist in some sort of a tree trimming for her, and a freak of nature flew me out of the tree. I dropped 25 feet, broke some bones. Well, that set us back. However, we kept moving forward in what we could do. It was a very trying time for about 6-8 weeks, and in that time we found somebody, an acquaintance I knew at the time, that offered us essentially a little area where he had a travel trailer on one of his properties, and that we were welcome to stay there in exchange for room and board. So it was a situation to get us out of the backyard and start on our path to stability. However, that lasted for quite some time. Just because we couldn't get ahead because I got in over my head with this guy. He basically turned into a slave driver, almost pretty much essentially free labor for just a small travel trailer. And at that time, Melina and I were only given a couple $100 of a financial assistance a month, which actually didn't help. It barely kept us afloat. It paid our cell phone bill, and just maybe miscellaneous food. I mean, it didn't provide anything. The kids knew where we were living. The kids have saw where we were living. The kids wanted to live with us, which we had no problem with. At that time, they were smaller, so that's what we could do. The kids did come to live with us. Eventually, we were probably separated now, not living in the same room for about 6-7 months. But they came to live with us in the trailer, and we tried to find a nice little niche for the four of us. And I guess you can say we made it work the best we could at the time. They were fed, they were clothed, they had what they needed. It came at a price to me, but an emotional toll, but it worked. The tide shifted in our favor. Backstory was about 6 months, 4 or 5, 6 months prior, Melina got hit in a crosswalk, and sued the driver. And at that turn of the year, I also did taxes, and I found out some structures where I could write down my receipts for work, and I did my taxes and got a refund, and Melina got her refund, or not her refund, her settlement from her accident, and we decided to move. We had to get out of the situation. I mean, I was emotionally torn up, probably physically and emotionally. The kids were getting bigger. The kids needed their own space. And we found a house, another one. And we moved in there. When we moved into the house, it wasn't sizable, the money we had, but looking back now, if we probably would have planned the financial futures better, we could have done better. And maybe to this day, we would have been in Phoenix. I don't know. You can't change the past. You can't think what if. That's how it is. So, but we're not saying we're gamblers. We didn't piss away the money. We didn't financially plan correctly. With the end of the money, we're sorry we couldn't pay rent. And at that time, her and I scrambled. This is in 2014. We scrambled. Uh, we were scouring the internet, looking for work, looking for anything, what we could do. We did not want to split up our family again. And that's what Matthew is failing to realize, is that that's not what we wanted to do. But in the best interest of our children, that's what we needed to do, what we had to do. Well, I answered an ad for a maintenance man in a multiple dwelling complex with multiple properties, and that's what I would be doing, is repairing and fixing everything in different properties. And I was going to be given a salary with a 2-bedroom apartment. That was in San Bernardino, California. Well, everything was on the up and up, which I believed, which maybe I didn't do my homework correctly, and that's my fault. I'll take credit where it's due. It was maybe my fault. Basically, we left like a thief in the night. We uprooted the kids to California. Upon getting there, there was no job. I got duped. And we didn't know what to do. We were on our ass in San Bernardino with no resources. Maylene and I made a conscious decision that we were going to make the best of this. We were going to figure our way out. And we did. It took us a while, but we got lucky. One day in particular, we were walking with our belongings, and this lady, long story short, gave us a hand up. She handed me, I'm not shitting with you, she gave me several $100s to say, what, if you want to succeed, you got to get out of San Bernardino County. You got to get to LA County, where they can have the resources to help you as a family. And that's exactly what we did. We went to LA County. Again, the money situation. The dollar goes to different directions in California versus Arizona. We were sleeping on the beach for about a week, and then basically we were walking one day to go start trying to get assistance, and we got picked up by a police officer and a counselor. Little did we know what the as much as he was a police officer, he was what they call the quality of life officer, basically to help families in need that want help to succeed. And he took a chance on us without all the details. Where it landed is that we had to go do we hotel hopped for about 3 weeks. The police officers, I believe they said it was the police department fund, or it was some fund, but we were given hotel rooms for 3 weeks, sharing a little room, 2 beds, with all 4 of us, but we were together. We didn't know exactly where this was going. However, in that time, after about 3 weeks, we landed, we were approved for a Catholic charity shelter. And that was really just no better than a hotel. It was just a little room, 2 sets of bunk beds, and we had rules and regulations to follow. Which we did, which we've done. And in that meantime, I was still looking for work, still difficult. We had financial assistance. However, the shelter wanted us to save our money. It was a 45-day program, and in that 45 days, we were supposed to, save up our money, which we did. Don't spend the money. Just they will take care of all of our needs. So the only thing that we had to spend at the time was, well, I'm a smoker, so that's about the only thing we had to spend on. That was 45 days, and we did the program in 45 days. However, the price of living was 4 or 5 times the amount of Phoenix. Well, with that money, we could have gone back to Phoenix or still made a go for it in California, which we decided to stay in California. We got a place called TLC, which was transitional living. Again, another room, 2 sets of bunk beds, a little bit more freedoms. What we had to do is we were in control of our own finances. However, we had to pay rent, like a small amount of rent, which actually was not rent. It was actually money that we gave to the center for when we moved out would be given to us back for either first month's rent, deposit, something upon successful permanent housing. And we had a bunch of rules to follow, which we did in those 6 months. Matthew and Yvonne were enrolled in school. They were doing okay. Yvonne was struggling just because, it's new school, new people, new environment. Matthew, on the other hand, he was trying to find his foot in the door. He was having a lot of issues adjusting because we came from a culture shock of where we lived in Phoenix, where it's predominantly Caucasian, to where he was going to school is predominantly African American, and he couldn't adjust. He was having a lot of difficulties, and we tried to help him through this, and we thought we were making strides helping him. However, Matthew is basically subliminally thinking, if you can't beat him, you're going to join him. Well, that's basically what he was doing. Still struggling to keep his grades up, but he just couldn't find his own niche at that time in the world, or even in school. Nothing that we could say or do would help. He was seeing a therapist. He was seeing a psychiatrist. And still, we weren't going anywhere. He was really struggling, and so were we. However, that's just how it is. We were in that program for 6 months. In that time, I found a job as a truck driver, long haul. The money was good. I was doing okay. At that time, I was slowly but surely, I wasn't home 3-4 days a week, but the paychecks were direct deposited, and we were able to save enough money in 6 months to get our own place to live. In 6 months, we moved from Long Beach, California. We moved to where we are now in Los Angeles. We did it all on our own with our own finances. I was working all the time. Maylena was playing the homemaker, which suited us because we did balance the budget and know that this was going to be a possible, feasible thing to do. It's not much. It's a quaint, mediocre where we live is a 2-bedroom apartment. And I was working. I wasn't home all the time. I mean, there were times where I could be gone 2 days, home for 3, gone 7 days, home for 1. It was strenuous. The miles were long, but the money was good. Matthew, Yvonne, Maylena, and I, we were all okay. The bills were being taken care of. The rent was not an issue. Everything was all right. However, Matthew again was still having problems in school. That's where it stood. Where Matthew, we've always known Matthew to be, an A and B student. When we moved here, he was struggling to keep even those grades up. Matthew has always been very smart mathematically. Well, his grades kerplunked. D's, F's in math, D's, F's in classes. He couldn't keep his grades up. We tried to get to the root of the problem, and Matthew would shun us. He didn't want to talk to us. He wanted to just live his own world, and maybe part of that's our fault at the time. But Matthew was just rebelling against us. This continued on and on. Uh, Over the course of over his summer break, I took Matthew on a road trip with me, all up and down the state of California. We were gone like 10 days, and I thought maybe after that time, Matthew and I would come to an understanding of where we saw each other. That actually was not the case. Matthew saw what other children were having. Matthew saw that the kids were having the finer clothes. The other kids were having the better of life. Mom and dad drove nice cars. Mom and dad always had everything for the children. And then Matthew was upset why he would get just a standard cricket phone or a standard smartphone. He wanted the best, and he was upset because I could not provide the best. I could provide every need that he wanted, not every want that he needed. That's where he failed to realize this. In this time, I also decided, well, not myself, Maylene and I decided to bring her then good friend from Phoenix over from Phoenix to California, and because we were established, agreed to help him out and get his, from our knowledge, get his foot in the door, get himself established in California. But that was going nowhere and fast. But beside the point is Matthew turned into where we would talk to him. No, you need to tell us where you are. He didn't feel the need to. Keep your grades up. I'm trying. He wasn't trying. Refused to do his homework. He would be lying to us about his whereabouts. We also found out that he was dabbling in marijuana. Typical teenage stuff. Matthew, like this, he didn't like to be grounded. He didn't like to stay put in the house. He didn't like living by our rules. He didn't like doing his chores. He didn't like, that we had structure for him. He didn't want to do any of this. He didn't want to have to do anything. He wanted to be able to go out, have fun, just be a kid. However, we weren't allowing him because of the choices that he was making. And he was getting upset about that. On an in particular day, a couple weeks prior, I got hurt at work. Didn't know at that time to the extent of what it was. But I was out of work for a little bit of time. Matthew decided one night, because he hit his breaking point. He didn't want to live here. He didn't want to live under our rules. So he was going to try to run away. We didn't understand why. He just didn't want to be here. So we had a several hour back and forth screaming match with Matthew. So Matthew decided one particular day, while mom was talking to him, Matthew struck his mom, and he ran away for the night. The complex where we live is a very small complex, and we kept the door open for him to return. He didn't return until the next morning. He told us he was one place, when in all fairness, he was somewhere else, and there was a bunch of people, there was tenants here that proved where he was. He was actually about 150 feet from us at another apartment, which Matthew still to this day denies. The police were involved, and there was not a whole lot that the police could do. The police didn't want to do anything. They chucked it up as Matthew's just going to be Matthew. He's just going to be a little kid. Well, we had to hold Matthew accountable we had to hold Matthew accountable for his actions. We didn't know exactly how to go about it. All right. So it came down to Matthew. A detective called us. We gave him the story, what I just told you, just a longer version of it, and they decided that this is to get him help. This is assault. Well, and they were going to prosecute him for assault. Matthew went to jail. He was there 3 days, and they released him back into our custody. It didn't take long. Matthew was just back to where Matthew was. Matthew did not want to be here. So Matthew, made excuses, and had a mental breakdown. And we called the cops again, and with some help from an agency, he was placed in a mental institution for children for 2 weeks. We were in contact with the psychiatrist. We were in contact with the therapist. It was explained that Matthew was not happy being here. Matthew wasn't happy living here. So they didn't know what to do. But it was deemed that, our home was the right environment. They did a background on us. They contacted DCFS, which in Arizona is CPS. They did an investigation and proved that there is no harm in this house to him, and he was to return home. Against Matthew's wishes, he was returned home to us. Again, within a week, Matthew didn't want to be here because Matthew didn't want to live under the structured environment of our house. That's how it went. So Matthew told his mom and I that he was going to kill himself. As opposed to yelling at him, we decided to call the local authorities, and the local authorities put him in for a psychiatric hold. Went right back to that same hospital. The same old story. We're bad parents. He doesn't like living here, and that he wants out. So between the prosecutor, between the law enforcement, we figured at that time we believed that residential treatment was going to be his best option, and that's what when he went to court, that's what he was sentenced to. He went exactly from the hospital to placement. He was at placement for 6 months. There was terms that he had to follow. There was terms that we had to follow. The terms were for us to follow as parents is that we had to come out to his placement 3 times, which was from our house with no car, 4.5 hours, one way. And we did it. We were also supposed to have family therapy, which we never had. We had family counseling. And we were never we were told that we were going to stay in the loop with Matthew about what he was doing and how he was progressing. However, that was not the case. We only had one meeting annually to discuss his progress, and that was it. So Matthew was gone for 6 months out of our house, and he came home on home passes. Those home passes weren't all that great. It was him coming home. He had pocket money. He was told that he was allowed to spend his money any way he saw fit, spend his money, and then come home, go back to the placement. That's how it went for the last 3 months of his placement. Come home, spend money, leave. That was it. Matthew did come home to us after 6 months through the judge. The judge ordered for him to be discharged from the placement, and that all parties involved is that he should be able to come home. So he did. We placed Matthew in public high school upon him getting out. Because of the time he got out, it was at an odd time of the year. However, he decided he was also going to join the ROTC program, and he was going to try to make strides to do better in his life, which was all smoke and mirrors. That didn't happen. From the very get-go, he couldn't keep his grades up. He was lying to us about his whereabouts. He didn't want to do his chores at home. He didn't want to have any structure. He wanted to just live life freely. Even though he was on probation and had terms of probation, he didn't want to listen to those. He didn't feel he had to, even though one of his terms of probation said, you will listen and abide by your parents' rules, which he didn't have to do. He was also supposed to do counseling and therapy counseling, which he was doing therapy. We were doing family counseling, and Maylena and I had a parent advocate. And we were all supposed to work as a collaborative, cohesive unit. That did not happen. In family therapy, he was told if he's angry, he can walk away from us. He can walk away from any situation he doesn't feel comfortable with. In his private sessions, we don't know what was said because due to confidentiality, we're not allowed to know unless he threatened to harm us or others. And apparently he did not. We had a family advocate, which was kind of like our therapist. Again, no disclosure about what we did, what we've said for our half. It was our person. It was our advocate for our side. And it was doomed from the very beginning. He took out of family therapy what they told him is that he could do basically essentially whatever he wanted, and that mom and dad, as us, were supposed to accept it and just let him live his life. However, he's on probation, and probation says no. Well, he doesn't like the rules. So he ran off again. This was not acceptable by our standards. This was not acceptable by probation standards. Finally, we had to put our foot down, and through the PO's advice, in order for him to get help, we were to tell the law enforcement we will not allow him to come home at that time, and that's exactly what we did. And he went back. He was again relocked up back in the juvenile facility, pending the outcome of the case. The outcome came where, he came out. It came out to be where he was going to be placed back in the same placement he did for 6 months. Which that same placement again gives him money, an allowance, per se. Give him clothing vouchers, take care of his day-to-day needs, and that mom and dad were again supposed to come out there to his placement. We were supposed to abide by their standards, by their rules for Matthew, which we did. Matthew, the second time around, could not adapt to the program, to their program. He couldn't abide by our rules at home. He was not having successful home passes, which would be reported to the probation officer. On a particular day, shortly before he was to come to court to decide his fate, either he was going to come home or be extended in his program, we had a discussion with his PO and explained that at this time, what we wanted was successful home passes before he came home. And the PO agreed to this, and the PO put in a stipulation that the parents want successful home passes before he comes home. Therefore, an extension of his placement for for up to 3 months, deeming a status hearing in 3 months on how we all fit. Matthew did have home passes. I cannot say they were great. I cannot say they were bad. But Matthew was not happy being at home. Matthew wanted to go out. Matthew wanted to do basically what he wanted, which we weren't allowing to happen. But the passes were just average. We explained to Matthew that if you come home, the rules are going to be simple. You're gonna do your chores. You're going to keep your grades up, and you're going to be honest with us. And those were the 3 main concerns that we had at home. One fateful day, he was on pass. He came home, or he was on pass, came home, and I guess he had a phone. And which, okay. However, either the staff or the other children at his placement took the phone, found and took the phone. Matthew AWOL'd from the placement, and his reasoning behind it was that he AWOL'd so he could go grab a knife and start stabbing people for taking his phone. Once the PO caught wind of this, the PO said that's it, that's enough. You have not done program. She was going to violate him, so instead of him coming home in less than 30 days. It was to go back to court for another status hearing. And at this time there was back and forth accusations being flown. Matthew claimed that I was abusive to him, I was abusive to his sister, and I was abusive to his mom. That I had that I was the bad guy in all this, that I couldn't provide for him, that I left my family in filth. I left my family deserted. I didn't take care of anything. And then and also that I was a raging alcoholic. And I did nothing but drink all day. And basically that's how it turned out. I drank and I abused everybody in this house all day. Which, if anybody wants to talk to me, Elena, anybody wants to talk to you, Yvonne, that's not the case. Matthew is turning me in to be the bad guy. Which in this time we also had another investigation from DCFS, which again is CPS, and CPS founded that all his claims were unfounded. Which basically meaning Matthew's telling tall tales. Just Matthew didn't want to listen to, Matthew just didn't like it here. We went back to court, and though Matthew's not a violent delinquent, Matthew couldn't conform to the rules and regulations of his probation and was sentenced to be replaced in another placement. But at that time, the judge, which felt that this was, she was sorry for him, why she couldn't let him come home. She had to remain him detained in the juvenile facility until he found placement. Matthew was placed in another facility. He was placed in a group home, in an actual house, in an actual neighborhood, in another city. We've had a brief session with them when we came to see Matthew in person, and we were told that that Matthew was going to be structured and Matthew was going to be held accountable for his actions. That we were also going to be held accountable for our actions, and to hopefully in this time is that we would all be reunified on a united front. However, that's not the case. Prior to Matthew being locked up prior to anything, we made the rule to Matthew because he was not, what we believed he was not ready for was any type of social media, YouTube, Facebook, Snappy Chat, whatever. And he did not like that. So he explained this to the judge, and the judge gave him all of those. They gave him social media. They allowed him to have a phone. They allowed him to do everything that we didn't. So we got thrown under the bus. But we digressed from this whole situation. And Matthew got his Facebook. He started Facebook under a false pre-name. He blocked us so that he may do whatever he wants. Over a short time, he did unblock us. He did go back to his real name, and we were friends on Facebook, watching what Matthew was posting, commenting, trying. And in this time, we were also discussing Matthew's future. That Matthew did not want to live here in California. Matthew wanted to live in Phoenix. However, family members, not saying they didn't want him, there was no room for him in any members of the family. So that the only people that could financially take care of him were us. But he didn't want to see it this way. He wanted to make sure that it was done under his terms, his rules, and that we were the evil ones in all this. So Matthew's at a point now where we're in the midst of a battle. Matthew wants to go to Phoenix. There's nobody in Phoenix that is, I can't say willing, but is not financially secured enough to handle the responsibilities of Matthew. And that's what he doesn't see, because Matthew just assumes that he's family and that everyone will just break down and accept him. It's not a matter of accepting him. It's a matter of taking a responsibility for a child that has some twisted delusions about how he's seeing life at this particular moment. So he is deciding that he's going to be, he has again blocked us, his mom and I, from Facebook. However, he does speak to certain family members, and he might very well be telling certain family members different stories, and that's Matthew. And we accept that, but I can't even say we accept it. That's just how it is. Matthew's upset because at this time we don't feel that home is the right environment for him, and for the choices that he's been making, that his sister being a part of his life is not best for him nor her, and that Matthew needs to straighten up, or go pursue his own avenues in life. Well, Matthew is going to pursue his own avenues in life. I sent out a mass text to the family about where this stood, and it's been hit with mixed reviews, which I understand. But in that whole thing that I wrote, I was not asking the family for help. I was not asking the family to take him. I did need to let them know what was going on, and that if a particular family member decided to take him, that was 100% their choice. We support the decision, but we can't support Matthew's actions, and because of prior, just his priors. Maybe later on in life, maybe with some great guidance from either his facilities or family, he can get himself back on track. But this is not the place that he's going to do it in. The reason for all this was to consciously inform the family about him without bashing him, without us bashing ourselves. It was just the honest to God's truth of what's happened. Now all I can say is, you as the family member know our side, and then you can listen to Matthew's side and make your own choice. We're not mad either way. We want the best for him. We always have. But due to his actions here, he has burned bridges. He's burned enough to where he needs to find another avenue. And we can't help him find that avenue. It's unnerving. We do love him. We always will. But until he can be the young man that we know he can be, this is not his environment. I mean, I appreciate if anybody has watched it this long, and I thank you. Maylena thanks you. But now, this isn't without anger. This is with frustration. But if you have suggestions, if you have any way that you can do things for him, then please do. But I can't see a way out of it. I cannot see a way to make this work for us involved, for Maylena, Yvonne, and myself. I don't know. I've rambled enough. We said our side. We love you guys as a family. We support you in what you choose to do. Thanks.